Hi, I'm Will Butler-Adams and I'm CEO of Brompton Bicycle. We export about 80%, and in that 80%, key markets are Germany, Benelux, South Korea, Japan, the US.
Under the right circumstances, trade can be beneficial, but why is it necessary to have more trade?
Trade is beneficial if both sides get something out of it and if consumers get something out of it as well as producers. So if trade is generally seen to be good for economic growth, good for economic output, and good for living standards. So that would be the advantage of a good trade deal.
The European Union and the United States are now negotiating a trade agreement, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, TTIP. But TTIP will never become a reality if both the European Parliament and the Council do not agree on it. This is a double democratic guarantee. But why would our democratic representatives vote in favour for it? In Europe, there are 5 million jobs thanks to trade with the United States, and these jobs tend to be more highly skilled and better paid. But we could improve this.
The small and medium-sized enterprises are much more affected by the fact that we have barriers.
My name is Martin Welker. I'm the CEO and owner of Schutte, a machine tool builder. We have about 600 employees in Cologne.
One of the challenges which we have in the US is that the price is different because we get taxed. We're currently paying about 11% in the US for bikes and about 20% for luggage. We really can't even sell our luggage in the US because it's not competitive. And because the tariff is at 20% for luggage, bags, we're selling a bike without the bit that makes it really fun, the bag, because it's so expensive. And the customer doesn't understand it. And then they see in the UK it's like this cheap. And they're like, well, are you ripping us off or what's going on?
Why do we need TTIP? Isn't it the WTO that sets the rules for international trade?
In a globalized world, we have reached a moment where the WTO has not delivered what it had promised.
I mean, TTIP itself is a second best solution to a trade liberalisation deal done multilaterally through the WTO. So we have a TTIP negotiation because the WTO Doha round failed.
Who will set the global standards for the regulation of goods and services in the 21st century? The EU and the US are more likely to be successful if they work together. What are the obstacles and what are the barriers?
Actually, two barriers. The one is tariffs, and the other ones are the non-tariff barriers.
If you were able to make it easier for companies to export across the Atlantic in either direction, with fewer regulatory barriers, that would be helpful.
What we are looking at is in different areas, mainly technical, where we can recognize each other's standards. And if we can agree that one test is enough, then we could save quite a lot of money and time.
Take the security issue on planes. In the EU, you can take up to 100 millilitres of liquids onto a plane. In the US, it's 3 ounces. These quantities are not exactly the same, but they achieve the same objective to keep us safe. Therefore, these safety standards have been recognised as equivalent. In the current negotiations, regulators are looking at other cases in specific industrial sectors where a similar result can be achieved. The EU and US standards can be recognised as equivalent if, and only if, they achieve the same outcome in terms of safety. Equivalence means more trade and it guarantees safety.
Take, for example, the neutral wire in a machine tool. In Europe, the neutral wire is blue. In America, depending on the state, actually depending on the county, it gives you 45 different options, but it can't be blue.
There are many areas where Europe and the US can find common ground to cooperate better, but there are also some areas, some red lines, the European people are clearly opposed to compromise on. Red lines for the negotiations are clearly defined. These mandates are very clear. That means there can't be and there won't be a lowering of standards.
Those hormones that are forbidden in the EU will still be forbidden.
We won't be invaded by chlorine chicken or hormone beef.
Genetically modified food is one main concern. In the USA, the use of GMOs in feed and for consumption is common. For Europeans, this is unthinkable.
think there are some issues which are going to prove so difficult that they may have to be excluded from the deal. I think GMO foods in Europe, I think that's going to be a pretty hard sell.
That is why the European institutions clearly stated that GMOs will be excluded from TTIP.
We are not able to accept any possible agreement on GMOs.
We have a very special system of allowing GMO products in Europe, whether they come from the US or elsewhere. They have to be approved by EFSA, the authority. If they are approved, then they can be sold here. If they're not approved, they cannot. That will not change with TTIP.
That's what opponents of TTIP really worry about, that this is a deal which essentially just benefits the corporate side of the equation and not consumers, not workers.
We need to have international agreements which are small and medium-sized enterprises friendly, consumer friendly, and that are able to respect the fact that we have values, we have standards, we have rights, and we want to protect them. This could really be a gain for the well-being of all the people.
TTIP can achieve all this and set golden rules for the future. Free trade around the world is happening with or without the EU. If Europe does not lead, others will. Let the EU seize this opportunity.